Welcome to the underground, you rebel scum. This is the American Expat, and today I have the pleasure of introducing you to the Mamiya MSX 500. This incredibly robust camera of the 1974 vintage is the perfect camera for anyone who's looking to get started in film photography. Kind of, maybe. I mean, if you're looking for something at a good price that's really, really sturdy, I mean, this one is by far not the best example of one of these cameras. It's been treated terribly by whoever owned it before, totally neglected, and yet it still functions after all of this time, all of these decades. And we're going to be going over all of its features or lack of features and take it out into the field to see how well it does today. So let's grab a cup of coffee and see what this camera is all about. Thanks for sticking with us. Before we get too far into the video, I want to remind each of you that the like button lives down below this video. If you wouldn't mind helping us out, maybe go down there and click on that like button. Now, you don't have to do it right now, but after you've gone through some of the video and decided whether you like it or not, then you don't forget that it's there down below the video. So without further delay, let's get into this Mamiya MSX 500. Now, Mamiya is a company that a lot of people who are into photography are probably familiar with. They make high-end, medium format cameras for professional use. And, even today, if you were to get an example of one of these old medium format SLRs, they still go for like $400 or $500 or even more on up from there if it's a working example. So really, really nice ones. This is not one of those. Now, Mamiya started in 1940. This is pre-war Japan, before all of that stuff. And somehow they managed to survive, and this one comes a bit later than that. So 1940 all the way to 1974, before Star Wars, if we want to put, never mind. They came up with this, the MSX series. There are two of them that were released as part of this series, the MSX 500 and the MSX 1000. The numbers refer to the speed, the top speed, I should say, of the shutter. So in this case, this is not the high-end model. It's missing a couple of things. The 500 refers to 1/500th of a second is the fastest speed, but let's face it, unless you're going to be photographing, race cars or something like that, it's probably going to do the job. And at the price that you can pick this thing up for, I mean, if you go into a thrift store and you see one of these, you're probably going to be able to walk home with it for 15 to 20 bucks. Really, really good price. And as I mentioned before, this is a very solid and robust camera. It doesn't have a lot of electronic. In fact, it's not electronic at all. The only thing electronic in it is the light meter thingamajig that works a little different than the other cameras we've talked about, which we'll go over that here in just a second. But yeah, solid camera, mechanical, so it's probably going to be in working condition if you do come across one, and at a great price. Now, as I mentioned, it has an interesting light meter inside. If you look through the viewfinder, you'll see a plus and a minus in a little box thing. You know that you're at the correct exposure when the needle is in between those. I didn't bother to put a battery into this camera because I just used the phone. It's more accurate. I have an app, and I would recommend that to you. Maybe download one of these apps for free so you can just point at something and get the correct exposure. Much easier that way. Or you can put a battery in it and then, try to use its plus minus needle thingamajig. But yeah, it's a pretty simple camera to work with. Just like any other camera, you pull up on the little thing here that you use to wind the film, and the back pops open. Just put the film in, pull it across until it's latched in there, shut it again, wind it up a couple of times and set it off until it gets to the 1, and you're all set to go. And we're all set to go. I have loaded into this thing some Kodak Gold 200. So let's go out on the road and see what this camera can do. For this first set of photos, my gosh, what's that up in the sky? Don't worry, it's just a dirty sensor. It's dust. I tried a dust removal feature in the editing software I use, but the hole in the sky looked worse than the dust, so it stays and reminds us to keep our equipment clean. We're making the short drive to Logan, West Virginia for these first photos. Logan used to be quite a place, full of life and businesses. Unfortunately, coal is not booming these days, and the city has lost 2/3 or more of its population. but the old buildings in its downtown still remain for us to photograph. This old car park has an interesting texture to the concrete. It all looks so out of place for the city that's this small today. It's kind of sad to see a lot of the place crumbling and being reclaimed by the surrounding forests. Speaking of forests, just up the street is Chief Logan State Park. It's named for an Iroquois leader known as Logan the Orator. Although there's some dispute over his true identity, he's said to have been involved in a massacre fueled by a need for revenge after his entire family was killed. In either case, it offers some landscape photography opportunities. That looks kind of nice. Now we're driving to Konkin Park near Charleston, West Virginia. It's a park in peril. They want to expand the runway at the airport, but that will mean no more cool park. This tree standing by itself looks interesting. This part of the park is actually for frisbee golf. This river walk is nice and shaded. Overexposed and out of focus. This squirrel is not afraid. Maybe we can... Yes. Now let's hit the upper park. It's peaceful up here, until airplanes fly right overhead to land at the airport. Nice shot, though I think it's still overexposed. A covered picnic pavilion. Let's try from this angle. Nice. And we're back. Well, what'd you think of the photos from the Mamiya MSX 500? To be honest, there was a time there where I got to the end of the roll, or what I thought should have been the end of the roll, I guess photo number 36, and guess what? It kept going. It kept going and going. At some point, I guess it wasn't taking photos. It wasn't advancing. I don't know what was going on or how that happened, but there were photos that I thought I had taken that weren't there. But I seem to have gotten it worked out. It would have been some of the earlier photos. And now the camera is functioning as it is supposed to. And we got the photos that you saw. Some of them, they were out of focus. This lens, I don't know. It's hard for me to see, in bright conditions, it's easy to see what's focused and what's not. But in some of the darker places, it was a little bit trickier and the exposure was a little bit off. That's not because of the camera. That's more because of how I was doing the light metering thing. Maybe if that plus minus needle was working in there, I would have gotten better photos. I should have put a battery in the thing. But overall, yeah, a solid camera. Maybe it doesn't have all of the features of some of the nicer ones, but hey, you can pick this thing up real cheap. So if you see one sitting in a thrift store somewhere at a yard sale or something like that, go for it. It's not a bad place to start. I mean, if you're going to be learning to do photography with manual stuff. Anyway, I better leave it at that. Don't forget about that like button that lives down below the video. I'll see you guys in the next one.